Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC, and also taught financial planning at Purdue University for 7 years. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Cantos.
I hope you had an outstanding Memorial Day weekend. You know, it's always a fun time for us. We get as much of our family time in as we can. I get to see my little brother who now lives in Ohio, and the golf, and as Barb would say, and more golf.
And more golf, but we all avoid Indianapolis on Memorial Day weekend.
I had the blessings of going to Germany in 1991 or 92. I guess it was Christmas Eve of 91. I went over to see my brother. John was there for a year in Hamburg. And we're in southern Germany at the time, and they don't understand where Indiana is. They understood the United States, and the only thing they want to know is, have we been to the race?
Yeah, I know.
And so Barb and I went probably 7 or 8 times. I do not need to be in that traffic.
Yes,
I got a comfy couch, a good radio.
Right.
Life is good. But it does bring up those fond memories of going up to the lakes and listening on the radio, because we were in a distance where you could do that. And, my cousin Rex and everyone else just huddled around listening. Fun stuff. So got a lot for you on the show today. We're going to talk about the in search of the missing income. Had a gentleman call in and ask a really good question about some CDs, things that he should consider. That's things, if you have CDs or know somebody who does, probably ought to consider. We're going to talk about the best way to structure some of that from a tax standpoint as well as an investment standpoint. I also had the opportunity to be able to go with the Chamber of Commerce to Washington, D.C. this last week. Was able to meet with the vice president, his staff, got some really, really good information and insight. Senator Donnelly, Senator Young, and Congresswoman Susan Brooks. And so I'm going to share some of those things with you, some of their thoughts, some of the things that are going on in the political world, and from a bureaucratic standpoint. I think we make a mistake sometimes of getting ahead of ourselves, of saying, oh my, the sky is falling or the wolf is coming. It's more important to know what's actually passed. But seeing how the sausage was being made,
right.
I found enlightening and enjoyable, where maybe not everybody else would have. But it was very, very fun, and we're going to talk about it on the show, watching people from the Republican side and the Democrat side, and I mean the 16 of us that went. Some in not-for-profit, some business, but watching the collusion of us coming together to be able to talk, ask questions, learn. I certainly learned from my peers. I hope I provided them some insight and guidance as well. But life is good. We're ready for a great show. You got a question or comment, shoot me an email. Consider this at yourlifeafterwork.com. We'll take a break and get right back to the show.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC, and also taught financial planning at Purdue University for 7 years. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Contos.
Happy to have you folks along. Hope you have had an outstanding Memorial Day weekend. You know, a short week coming back.
Yeah, it's hard.
And this is when crazy stuff in the market starts to happen. You know,
Seriously?
because everybody goes on vacation. Well, I shouldn't say everybody.
Right.
Us poor folks in Indiana, we continue to work.
I know.
But a lot of New York and a lot of the larger financial institutions just tend to take the summer months off. You hear the sell in May and go away, and obviously that didn't work out for people so far for this year.
Yeah.
At least as of the time of this recording. But about 70% of the market growth does occur between the third week in October and the first week of May, and you get less results usually, but not always in the summer months, and usually a little bit more volatility. So we'll see how June and July shake out in terms of where we are. Memorial Day is always an important time for our family, and I hope you were able to spend some time with your family and think about those that we had lost.
Yeah.
So not to make light of losing somebody, but just as a pun, let's talk about some lost income.
Okay.
So one of the common questions I get came in this week, again, was what do I do with my CD and this very loss of income?
Yeah.
And it is a true issue. And there's things that people forget that banks don't always want to tell you about. So
you mean options?
Yeah. First of all, what is a CD? Well, it's a certificate of deposit. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that all, but every CD that I've ever experienced has the following rules. You lock your money in for a period of time. Could be 1 year, could be 1 month, could be 6 months, could be 5 years. I've seen 7-year and 10-year CDs. Mm-hmm. Nobody buys them, or most people aren't buying them right now because the interest rate environment is so very, very low. Right. We all know that. But the way the deal works, so in this particular case, the person called and said, I have a CD that is coming due on Friday. I have to make a decision. Typically, the banks, and I don't know about credit unions per se, but typically the banks, if you don't make a decision within 10 days, they will automatically re-enroll you in a new CD.
Yeah.
Where people believe they're trapped. So in this gentleman's case, he had what we would call a laddered CD portfolio. So he had one that was coming due on Friday, has one that's coming due next year, one that's coming due the following year, and so forth.
Yeah.
And, we looked at the interest rates. I asked him the question, which we're going to talk about. I said, why do you have money in a certificate of deposit anyhow? Mm-hmm. And he gave me 2 answers. Actually, he gave me 3. One, he was scared of the market. By the market, most people mean the stock market, without understanding the fixed income market, right. Which if you're listening to the show, hopefully between the next 2, this segment and the next segment, you will understand a little bit more about income because we're going to devote that much time to it. So he was scared of the market. That was one. The second thing was that he wanted to try to have money that came due every year so he could take out what he need and reinvest the rest. That's how people would build laddered bond portfolios years ago. So they would buy 20-year bonds, and each year one would come due. They would live off of what they needed to live off and buy another one for the 21st year.
Wow.
So that they constantly had 20 years. It was an interesting way to go if you want to live inside of that world and you know what your income structure was. But the third was he didn't know, he hadn't thought through that there's a difference in money. So when I talk to people that are in this situation, there's what I call today money, there's tomorrow money, and there's later money.
Okay.
Right? So when one of the often mistaken, in my opinion, things about retirement planning that people do is, they say, well, I'm retired now, so I can no longer afford to take the risk.
Right.
And so they'll move money from the equity side into fixed income or into cash. And I try to remind people, folks, if you're 60 years old and you're married and you're in reasonable health, that doesn't even mean great health. The actuaries tell us there's a 90% probability one of you makes it to 90.
Right.
That means I've got to, Joe, as your financial planner, as your retirement liaison, I've got to make sure that you have income for the next 30 years. So that's as long as your entire career. So this notion that we should take all of our money and put it into something because we can no longer afford quote unquote risk.
Yeah.
With all, and think about it, folks, that's only principal risk, right?
Right.
That's the risk that it goes away. That doesn't deal with inflationary risk, business risk, credit risk, market risk, liquidity risk. There's about 13 different risks that just because you ignore doesn't mean they're not there, right? So we have to think about money that's today money. And money that I'm going to use today, I need to have in a money market or a short-term CD. You're not going to have any growth on your money. You're going to lose to inflation. But the point is you plan on using that money in some time, and then in my mind, the next 6 months, right? To buy a car, go on a vacation, pay for a wedding, a down payment for a business or a building or a house. It's one of those things where the growth doesn't matter near as much as what the liquidity does, right? And so that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, what is tomorrow money? Tomorrow money to me is money that we're going to use over the next 3 to 5 years, right? Now, people will say, Joe, is the market overvalued? And again, they're talking about the equity market. Is the market overvalued or not overvalued? And I can't answer that. I can tell you that there are individual companies that we feel very comfortable with at the Financial Enhancement Group. Adam Harder, our internal CFA and chief investment strategist, and our chartered market technician, Andrew Thrasher. When the three of us look at the portfolios and build them, we look at things like, okay, what do we expect this thing to do over the next 3 to 5 years, not the next 3 to 5 months, right?
Right.
Andrew would look at it as a technician, would look at it on the shorter term. Adam would certainly look at it on a longer term. The three of us are able to come together to get that process done. So you treat money that you're going to use over the next 3 to 5 years differently than you would treat money that you're going to use in the next 30 days.
Does that mean you have it invested differently?
Absolutely. Okay. And sometimes even in different institutions.
Oh.
I have a bank account.
Right.
Now, the majority of our money is at TD Ameritrade, right? Because it's not money that I plan to use tomorrow. That comes out of my income.
Right.
But when people come in and we help them plan and program their retirement, it's very common for us to have a bank account, not with a lot of money,
right,
but a bank account here locally. And then we use their assets to produce an income. So income is deposited into their account, just like a pension every month.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, they've essentially created their own pension. But then there's later money, and that's money that you may or may not get around to using.
Yeah.
It's money that you may think you plan on using for retirement. What I will tell you happens invariably is because we don't know when God is going to call us home.
Right. Yeah.
The people that I deal with don't die broke.
Right.
Right. There's always money that's left over. And the industry thought process is when you get to a certain age, you shouldn't own equities. And, I loved my wife's grandmother. Grandma Lear passed away at age 98. And it was around 2005, 2006. CD rates were 3.5%, 4.5%.
Yeah.
And most people would say at 98, she should have been all in cash and all in CDs. And I would raise my hand and say, let's use some common sense, folks. She hadn't spent it all yet.
Right.
And she's probably not going to spend it.
Right.
And which would my mother-in-law rather inherit? A CD at 3% or a rising market like crazy back in 2008 and 2005, 6, and 7?
Right.
So you really have to use your head and understand those three different scenarios in terms of how your income, where your income is going to come from. So Sherry and I are going to take a break. We're going to come back, though, and we're going to talk about the different ways that you can produce income, whether you're in retirement, preparing for retirement, thinking about retirement, or you've got money that's sitting around today. And I'll teach you the one rule about certificates of deposit, CDs, that the banks just fail to get around to explaining to you. Anyhow, it'll be worth your time, I hope. If you got a question or comment, you can shoot me an email. Consider this at yourlifeafterwork.com. We really do think that's what it's all about. yourlifeafterwork.com. We'll take a break and be right back.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-2454 4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Cantos.
Very, very happy to have you folks along. If you missed the last segment, so this is these two kind of went together, and if you're driving your car down the road and you missed the last segment, you can catch our show on multiple different formats. You can certainly go to our website at yourlifeafterwork.com. Just click on the radio link from this week, and you'll be able to get that first segment that you missed.
Sure.
For those of you listening on WIBC, you only get 4 of the 5 segments.
And you get to miss mine.
if there's one that you're, if you want to hear the Sherry segment,
yes,
that's where she always comes up with a topic I know nothing of. Well, I don't know that she's going to bring it up, and then we discuss it. It's
I keep trying to find one you don't know anything about.
And I'll tell you, if there's read a lot and I don't know much about anything other than money, but
okay.
As long as we're talking about that, I tend to do okay. But this week we're talking about the In Search of Income. I had a gentleman call and say, hey, I've got to come in Friday. I've got to make a decision over this CD, And what happens in our mind, Sherry, with so many things is once we think we know the rules, and it's something that we really don't think about a lot or know about a lot, we get stuck in the same mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to tax deferral, right? Most of the 401k programs started around 1980, the Keogh Act and things of that nature. And in 1980, the top tax bracket was 70%.
Yeah.
And, there were a bunch of different, if you think
high.
about stair steps, it's very high. Today's the top's 39.6, which is still high.
Yeah.
But 70 was higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people made the decision between 1980 and 1985 to do tax deferral.
Right.
Sounded good, looked good, a lot of the research that was there, and I would have told you back in that period of time, it probably made sense for higher income earners.
Yep.
Today, 29 years later, after 1986, when Reagan changed the code, the last major overhaul, and today, 29 years after my career started, I can tell you a couple things, and that's that very few people, it's been about 15 probably in our practice, literally retire on less income than what they made before. Because when people retire, they want to maintain their standard of living.
Right.
So, if you're living on $80,000 a year today,
mm-hmm.
you're going to want $80,000 a year when you retire, most likely.
Right. Yeah.
Now, there's some differences. You don't pay Social Security tax, et cetera, but your marginal rates really do stay the same.
Okay.
But people get stuff programmed in their head and they don't want to let it go.
Right.
It's not what you deal with every day. And so you don't think about principles changing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people who started investing in CDs did it back in the late 70s, early 80s. Inflation actually peaked in 1980 with the 30-year mortgage in our country averaging 18%, right?
Wow.
So it was nothing uncommon to have CDs that were 8 to 10%.
Yeah.
I mean, they really were out there. A lot of them 6, 8%, right? And so somebody would have a 5-year CD, and they would come to see me and they would go, well, we're going to hold off on the transferring the CD money because the bank will charge me if I break the CD early, and that is true.
Mm-hmm.
What they usually charge you is 1/4 of a year's of return.
1/4 of a year's return,
So if you had a CD that was at 8%,
a
quarter of that would be 2, right?
Yeah.
That's a pretty hefty penalty to pay.
Yeah.
You have a $100,000 CD. Nobody wants to pay $2,000 to get out of that, even though the market may be doing very, very, very well.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But now people will come in here, and this is part of the difference of being able to do the financial planning part the way we do it. People will come in, and they've got a CD that they're getting 1% on, let's say. We'll make it 2% just to make it easy, right? And it's another 4-year term, and they're getting 2%, which a lot of people would be plumb tickled with, right?
Yes.
That to move that out early, some banks don't charge anything. Some charge 1/4 of 1 year's return.
Right.
So if you're getting to 1/4 would be 0.5%. So you can actually free up that money for 0.5%,
not much.
as opposed to waiting the next 3.5 years or 4 years
Sure.
to whenever it's due.
Right.
Nonetheless, that's one of the things you need to be aware of, and one of the things I explained to them. And when we talk about today money, tomorrow money, and later money, in this gentleman's case, it made sense to surrender 3 of those other CDs, and we actually kept one. Because it made sense in his case to be able to keep. So part of being a fiduciary and a certified financial planner, we're able to look at this and say, okay, here's how your money truly needs to look across the board, not just here. We help people with home decisions and mortgage decisions with, whether they should buy or sell and the tax implications. And we work with their CPA. So structuring all of this together just makes sense. And, we take care of people who don't want to worry about it.
Yeah.
Right? That's our job. And if you're not going to worry about it, that means we have to know everything and be able to put everything together. So a CD produces interest, Sherry, and interest is going to be taxed as normal, ordinary income on your tax return. So if you're in the 15% bracket, meaning if you're married filing jointly, you made less than $75,000 on line 43 of your return approximately. The line 43 will show you what your taxable income was. And if you're in the 15% bracket and you have a CD and you're getting interest, you're paying 15% tax on that.
Right.
Okay. That's plus whatever the state of Indiana decides to charge you in your county. We normally just assume 5%. If you have a bond, remember bonds don't pay interest. It's one of the confusing things for people. Bonds pay coupons. It's a fixed, a fixed income. That's why we call it fixed income.
Yes.
Right. So that if the bond's paying you $500 a year, it is not interest. It's a coupon.
It's a coupon, right.
But it's going to be taxed exactly like interest. So if you're in the 15% bracket, again, you're going to pay 15% plus the state tax that goes on top of that. Now, if you happen to have bought a municipal bond, right? Municipal bonds, Indiana-based, are not taxed, right? So
they're not taxed at any rate.
They're not taxed on the federal or state level.
Huh.
Now, that's a little misnomer because it does get added back up into some other things that can affect you. It gets the income tax is gone. Right?
Okay.
But
right.
that doesn't mean you should rush out and buy a municipal bond, folks.
Right.
I'm telling
Okay.
you. I'm just especially if you're at that bracket. If you're in the 15% bracket. So two other types of income, which, again, is when I started my career in 1987 and when I got my CFP in the 93, 94 era, when I was going through class, people would retire and clip coupons, lived on fixed income. We built a lot of bond laddered, portfolios and CDs, and people got used to it. But in 2003, it was 14 years ago, folks.
Yes.
In 2003, George W. Bush changed the tax code to make dividends and capital gains preferential items. So the capital gains rate, so I bought something, I've owned it for a year, I sell it, I make money on it, that's called a capital gain.
Right. Doesn't
happen inside of an IRA or 401k because that money's all going to be taxed as ordinary income when it comes out, unless it happens to be in a Roth IRA or 401k. But regardless, I sell a stock and I've got a growth on it and I'm going to pay capital gains tax on it if I held it for over a year. It's called long-term capital gains. Well, W changed the code so that if I'm in the 15% bracket or below, right? So if my AGI on line 43 is lower than 75,000 and I'm married filing jointly, I pay zero tax on that long-term capital gain. Zero is better than 15.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a major thing to understand. When you say, well, stocks can be volatile, that's true, but understand what you're giving up. Dividends are the same story. So if you're in the 15% bracket or below, it's tax-free income, to you and your family, which in many cases is better than a municipal bond.
Right.
And I would argue in almost all cases based on the valuation today, if you're in those first two brackets, the 10 or the 15% bracket. But it's important to understand how that income mix works. And that's one of the things that we do at the Financial Enhancement Group is we sit down with your whole picture and figure out the best way to get you income for your retirement, but we want to do it in the most tax efficient manner. Part of making money means we keep money, especially out of the hands of the Internal Revenue Service. Sherry, there is nothing that will separate you from your retirement like the IRS.
Yes, you said that.
You got a question or comment, shoot me an email. Consider this at yourlifeafterwork.com. I got to take a break. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4644 4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Cantos.
Very, very, very happy to have you along.
We are.
They appreciate knowing that there's many different things that you could do that you're listening to this show. So yeah. I am one of the fortunate things. I've just been in the right place at the right time and just been fortunate most of my career. There is a gentleman named Ed Slott who is the most well-known IRA expert in the world. Mm-hmm. Every now and then you'll see him on PBS. They've raised more money for public TV than anybody else in history. I think it's the fourth show that he's working on this season. It's all over the Wall Street Journal, and he's in charge of the Ed Slott Elite IRA Advisory Group. And I saw Ed speak at a meeting back in 2003 or 4. Mm-hmm. Said, "Hey Ed, if you ever need somebody else to fill in for you, like because I thought I could do this on my own, right?" The next thing I know, he calls and he says, "Joe, I'll be doing the speaking, but I do want you on our advisory board." And so for the last 12, 13 years, I've been working on the advisory board.
That's so cool.
With this group, and I've got to know a lot of people. So twice a year, 300 geeks like me, CPAs, tax attorneys, and high-level financial advisors show up and we talk about things. So I'm going to try to do the unthinkable. I'm going to spend the next 7 or 8 minutes with you and try to make part of tax planning matter, right? And not be boring. I don't want you to fall asleep, wreck your car, right?
Wow.
And I don't want you to doze off and find something else to
coffee,
do.
Folks.
Here's the deal, though. I hate losing to the IRS.
Right.
And it frustrates me when people make simple mistakes just because they didn't understand the rules or because they weren't thinking. So I had three people passed away this last week that I was able to see their stuff that was going on Facebook, and it wasn't they had a heart attack and died. Mm-hmm. It was long-term illness, cancer. They went into hospice, right? They knew this stuff was coming, right? They knew it was coming. And so I put on Facebook, I said, "Listen, this is a tough conversation, but do not knowingly lose to the IRS. I know the last thing you're thinking about when you're on your deathbed or your spouse is on their deathbed or your parents are on their deathbed. I know the last thing that's on your mind is the IRS, but it's always on my mind. And it's my passion. It's what we do. Do not ever die without a plan if you can control it." Now, my friend in Houston, December 11th, didn't wake up from a heart attack.
Right.
He should have had better planning done prior to then, but he didn't understand all the rules. But if you're sitting on this situation, you need to make a phone call, folks. And if it's not to me, find somebody else that understands the investment world and the tax code world. Don't give away money to the IRS without thinking. So I put that on Facebook, and one of my friends emails back, he said, "The fact that you can help people with this just proves our tax code is wrong. You shouldn't have to know the rules. It invites competition." And it's kind of like, no, whoa. And he's a computer expert.
Well, I will agree with the part you shouldn't have to know the rules. My soapbox about that. I hate that. Joe Average Public, there's no way they're going to know all the rules. I hate that. I hate that.
So you write grants, Sherry.
I know. I'm just saying.
And I don't know how to write grants, so I pay you.
I know.
I pay you to write grants. And the grants are government money that my tax dollars fund.
Well, I'm just saying.
And you don't want me to tell everybody on the show that anybody should be able to write a grant and get it done, because you and I both know that ain't true.
No,
I've tried to help write a grant. It doesn't work that well.
True, but everybody has to pay taxes. Everybody.
But everybody who funds those grants pays those through tax dollars. It's proceeds that have been taken from my billfold and gone.
Know.
So here's the bottom line.
Okay.
Your 1040 and my 1040 have the same lines.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
My job is to help people figure out how to to tell the best story they can with the tax code we have today.
Okay.
Right? Now, in the last segment, we talked about capital gains, right? And when you buy a stock and you sell it at a higher price, right? There's another thing. It's the reverse. It's the bad side of this. It's called a capital loss, right?
Yeah.
Capital loss is you bought it, you sold it for less money than what you paid for it. Again, not talking about an IRA or 401k here. We're talking about an account after tax, money that you should certainly have. We believe very much in tax diversification. So we help people build money that is tax deferred, tax free, i.e. Roths, either 401k or IRAs, and money that's after tax. You should have all three of those working. But let's say the tech wreck, because I still see returns that have huge capital losses. I can write off my losses every year up to my capital gains. Okay.
Yeah.
And an additional $3,000. So we saw somebody the other day that came in that had a $200,000 carry forward capital loss.
Wow.
It's $200,000 that they lost back in the tech wreck back in 2000, right?
They still haven't.
They still have $200,000, and they can only use $3,000 of that a year until they have a capital gain.
I
right?
see, and then they can.
And then the capital gain would offset, right? So it all works out. So we've been helping them, kind of navigate this over the years in terms of where they are.
Right.
Now let's pretend that it was me and Barb, and we had the $200,000 loss. I don't want to do this to anybody else. And all of a sudden, the doc says I have cancer, and that I'm going to be gone in 6 months, right?
Right.
So I'm not dying tomorrow. I've got time to plan. I got time to think about this. Technically, on a 1040, Barb and I had a joint account, and we had that $200,000 loss. Technically, when I die, half of that loss is gone. Now, that doesn't always happen in practice, right? But that is exactly how the CPA world or the code is supposed to work. It was a joint loss. One of the joints is gone. Half of the loss is gone.
Well, can you claim half of it and call it your loss?
Well, now this is where it gets to be interesting. So inside of my brokerage account, let's say I had a brokerage account that had $200,000 worth of gain in it, right? And it's in Barb and I's name, right? The correct thing probably would be to do is to sell those stocks so that gain offset that loss, right? So that it was able to be used. Now, that's not what we would really do, though. I would move the $200,000 into an individual account into my name, right?
Okay.
Because Barb's going to inherit it,
right?
Right. And when I die, she would get a step up in basis on the entire amount of the stock.
Okay.
So the $200,000 capital gain, for all intents and purposes, would reset.
Yeah.
And she would have the stocks and know nothing. What if she left it in a joint account? She would get a step up basis on half of the money.
Half of it, I see.
So she'd still have $100,000 worth of capital gains.
Okay.
So one of the things that we really want to do as you progress through life is really understanding that there's different things we need to be thinking about our money at all the time.
Right.
But the challenge is when people come in to see me or to see somebody on my team, there are people who don't understand most of what we just talked about. And folks, it's complicated. Trust me. I can fix anything with a phone book, right? I don't know how to do my plumbing. I don't know how to do gardening. I don't know how to do painting. I don't know how to do roofing. I don't know how to be an engineer.
You just pick up the phone.
I don't know how to do any of that. So if you think, wow, Joe, I should know more about my money. Well, honestly, it is a much more complex process than what people understand.
Sure.
So I have some people who say, Joe, I know nothing, and I'm good with that. We take care of people who don't want to worry about their money. I have other people, though, who come in and they understand investing very, very well, or they understand taxes very, very well. Most of our minds are not wired in such a way that we understand both the tax code and investing, right? All of the risks, the opportunities with investing, all of the nuances and intricacies with your tax return in 1040. Most of us don't know how to connect and to coordinate those things together. And the bottom line is, and I already said it once today, I'll say it again, nothing will separate you from your retirement like the Internal Revenue Service. In the 29 years I've been in the industry, markets go up and down. There's a lot of volatility. I lived through 87, the tech wreck, right? The 9/11 events, markets go up and down. 08, they go up and down. Generally over time, they go higher, right? Generally over time.
Yep.
You send a check to the IRS, it ain't coming back, right?
No.
And when we're gone, when God calls us home and we take that last breath, your tax return is officially ended, right?
Right.
Do not let that happen, folks. Reach out to somebody, whether that be us at the Financial Enhancement Group or somebody else that knows how to connect the dots. Let's plan and make the best out of it that we possibly can. Hey, you're listening to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark, along with Sherry Contos. Shoot me an email, considerthis@yourlifeafterwork.com. We'll take a break and be right back.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. The show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Contos.
Happy to have you along. Folks, I just got to do one of the most amazing things this past week, and it was just truly an honor, and you can read about it. I'm going to write for I've been writing for the Herald Bulletin, a column for the last 20 some years. So I'm going to write about this as well. But the Chamber of Commerce, and in some communities the chambers are pretty active, and some they're not. But the Chamber of Commerce in Anderson went to visit our legislators over various different things that we needed to discuss.
Sure.
And so you had this group of Republicans and Democrats.
Both.
You had people that were in the same industry that are natural competitors, okay, which we'll get to in a second. You had a lot of not-for-profits that were there, that were recognized, people that are trying to do really good things. And we went to, quite frankly, a political world that's in a state of confusion and shock, right? So we all had different issues that we were going, but there were 16 of us that went. And we were able to sit down first with the National Chamber of Commerce to find out what's on their mind. What are they thinking? And so we discussed stuff with their healthcare liaison, if you would. The healthcare bill is probably the most tenuous situation in Washington right now, I will tell you. We sit down with Senator Joe Donnelly, who is a Democrat. However, I will tell you this: he was voted. He said, I didn't see it, but I trust him. I liked the gentleman. That he was voted as the most moderate senator in the country.
Interesting.
Based on his voting record and everything else, which I thought was pretty cool. He's convinced the health bill won't get through, that there's only 43 votes as it stands right now. And we know that it's gone from the House and it's essentially in the Senate's hands.
Sure.
We sat with Senator Todd Young, first-time senator, right?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed his commentary and conversation. He spent some time with us and really drug out the depths.
Interesting.
And he said, let's just face facts. Whatever comes out is not going to be perfect. There's going to have to be give and take, but something has to be done, right?
Right.
And then we met with Representative Susan Brooks, who is our congressman here in my district, and Congress lady. And we can all agree on a few things. One that is that healthcare is the most messed up thing. It's got to be fixed. It will collapse in its current environment. But two of the people that we were with that I was so very proud of, Mike Shore is the new CEO of St. Vincent's here in Anderson. He took over from Tom Van Osdal when Tom took a promotion and went further into the St. Vincent's and Ascension Health world. And then Beth Tharp, who's the CEO of Community Hospital. So we have our two hospitals that are very much in competition with one another. Let's not kid ourselves. But to watch the two of them work so well together in laying out and explaining what was going on inside of the healthcare world was really neat to have. I learned things that I didn't want to learn, but things that we probably all needed to know. And they did a fabulous job. The senators, they were all very, very thankful to have what we were able to bring from Madison County to be able to relay data to them and go in. So those of you who have listened to the show for a long time know that I actually met the vice president 20-some years ago when he did his radio show on WIBC, came to Anderson. I met him. We took him to Rotary. And he and Karen and Barb and I have been friends for, a long time. A lot of these people that were with us on this chamber thing, probably half of us, at one place or another had run across with him either as Representative Mike Pence,
or Governor.
as Governor Mike Pence, or as Vice President Mike Pence.
Right.
And so Lonnie Zarnicki, right here from Anderson, Indiana, lived 150 yards from me for a long time.
Yeah.
Is one of his top people in Washington. And so we got to go to the vice president's office. And for about an hour and a half, we sit down with his main internal guy. And then they brought in the healthcare lady. And then they brought in the, because I have a lot of questions over the Department of Labor rule, which apparently now has been taken care of, over infrastructure spending. That's the one, by the way, that everybody agrees on. It's just a matter of how to fund it. Right. So Democrat, Republican, this one's 100% going to happen. It's just a matter of how it's funded. It will pass on both sides of the political spectrum as well as the Senate. So anyhow, we're in the VP's office, and it's a fabulous amount of history, great stuff that truly was a blessing. There was a bookshelf in there that really touched me, being a Hoosier, that had been closed. They lost the key over 40 years ago, and it's got all of the boats that pretty much came from the Spanish-American War. So there's these big ships all over the place.
Wow.
So anyhow, Lonnie finally gets them to make him a key. So he opens up the bookshelf because one of these little doorknobs had turned, and lo and behold, behind a sign is a ship. And the ship happens to be the USS Indianapolis. And, one we lost in World War II. So it was a very, very touching thing, very, very cool thing. Yeah. Anyhow, we're sitting around this table. We're working hard. We're trying to do the best we can to understand the world. And in walks the vice president. So we get to spend about a half an hour with him.
How
and
cool.
I'm so proud of him. And it was really, really, really great to see him. But it is fascinating to watch bureaucracy work from the backside. And so that I was able to see congressmen and senators come together, and there's still some bruises. Right?
Oh yeah.
This the ACA, what we call Obamacare, but the Affordable Health Care Act, is just wrapped in political agenda after political agenda, and people are at risk, as Beth and Mike so easily shared in their conversations. But whatever comes out is not going to be perfect. Do not get carried away and overly charged about some of the things that you see in the media. Again, I never thought about it, but if you've listened to the show, I have told you over and over and over that things get extrapolated out into the media because one person says it, 100 people repeat it, and 1,000 social media places pick it up.
Right.
And so it's easy for a story to become a genuine, encyclopedia. And one of those things that is in the healthcare bill, there is a line in the bill right now today that clearly says pre-existing conditions will be covered. And now the problem with my statement is I said clearly says. It doesn't clearly say. It says, but it doesn't clearly say. And so again, pre-existing conditions are going to be covered when the new healthcare bill is done. But the language needs to be cleaned up so that people can't say, well, it doesn't even cover pre-existing conditions.
Right. Yeah.
It does say, it just doesn't clearly say, right? But as soon as we get that fixed, and they're all in favor of doing the infrastructure stuff,
right,
and getting it moving. And I will leave you with what Joe Donnelly said. Somebody asked him, what should we take away from this? What should we be thinking? He said, don't listen to the media and the TVs.
Wow.
He said, we do not walk down these aisles and fight.
Really?
We do not hate each other.
Really?
We have lunch together. And we have to work together in order to be able to get things done.
Isn't that interesting?
And I don't think it's as true as much in the House as it is in the Senate.
Yeah, probably not.
But I was really impressed with his statement of saying that.
Yeah.
Of the access that we had, and kudos to our chamber dentist. You did a great job, Mike. Thank you for getting us there and setting it all up. And
that's so cool.
We should just be proud to know the people who are representing us from both sides of the aisle in the United States, and that they're going to work to try to get things done both for our great country and for the state of Indiana. And I appreciate that as one. Hey, you're listening to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark, along with Sherry Contos. Got to take a break. Get a question or comment, shoot me an email. Consider this at yourlifeafterwork.com.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. The show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Good morning and welcome back to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Contos.
And this is Sherry's most fun 9 minutes of her week, I think.
Well, yeah, but actually I get a little nervous about it every week because I don't want to, I want to stump you, but I also, I might ask something really stupid and not even know it's stupid till I ask it. And then here we are in the air talking about it.
So if you're new to the show or just happen to catch us, here's the deal. The show is made up of 5 segments. You can find all 5 of them of the radio show on our website at yourlifeafterwork.com, iTunes, Consider This with Big Joe Clark, or you can catch it on one of the 5 stations that we air on. And in the final segment of the show, Sherry always is allowed to bring a topic. She doesn't tell me what it is.
No.
And then she kind of goes from there. So God only knows what's going to happen. But
that's true.
If you've got a question or comment, you can shoot me an email, considerthis@yourlifeafterwork.com. And if you've got a topic you want Sherry to do some research on to try to push my buttons, which
just
happens
a lot. Forward this to Sherry, and we won't even let Joe read it.
There you go. And I can send you her email, and you guys can communicate in the background.
Right. Let's do that. Okay. So I ran across this article, and I thought this is interesting. Now, it may not be. There may be some generational issues here that we have to discuss because I know your typical clients may not fit this scenario, but they might, and our listeners might. So I'm just going to say it. The title of the article is The Benefits of Starting an IRA for Your Child.
Okay.
And it's interesting to me because I had not really ever thought about that. I have grandchildren now,
right?
And they're too young for this because to have an IRA, you have to have earned income, right?
Correct. Very good.
The child has to have.
Correct, not just you.
Right. So you're talking about children now that are old enough to have earned income. I don't know. Is there some sort of requirement about age?
Because have to be 18 in Indiana to be able to open up and sign for an account.
Can you have a custodial?
Not for an IRA.
Okay, well, we'll get to that.
By definition, an IRA has to be owned by the individual, no one else.
Wow.
Now, if you have an inherited IRA, you can have a person who's assigned via a trust or another form of document to oversee that for them. Mm-hmm. But somebody who's under 18 cannot sign the forms to be able to open up an IRA.
So are other states, do they go below age 18?
Never.
Never.
Some are 21.
Wow. Okay. All right. So the first requirement for starting an IRA for your child, earned income.
They have to have earned income.
They have to have earned income. Now, it would make sense to me because in the article, they go back and forth between traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. Totally makes sense to me that you're talking about a Roth IRA.
I would absolutely do because their tax bracket is going to be very, very low.
You would think it would be none.
Correct.
So, yeah. So I would think we focus on the Roth. It gave some interesting talks about, it's some statistics about if you start an IRA at a certain amount of money, like put $1,000 in now and do nothing. The advantages of this are to show compound interest,
Correct.
To show, the benefits of saving.
The time matters more than the money, actually.
Right.
Because of compounding.
So, I'm looking through here. Yeah. So they're like, if you start with $1,000 IRA contribution, but they have at age 10. Now, how's that even possible?
It's not.
Well, then how?
Because the article's wrong. It happens a lot. People understand investing or they understand taxes. They don't necessarily understand both.
Well, then forget about that part.
No. So what do? You've got a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And you want to do this, but you aren't able to use the code. So now we go back to that custodial account that you want to do. So there are codes that are called UTMA or UGMA, Uniform Transfer to Minor Act or Uniform Gift to Minors Act.
Okay.
The problem with those accounts is when you open them up, it truly is the kid's money when they reach age of majority, which could be 18 or 21.
Right.
Depending on where they are. You have to understand it's their money. They want to take it out and go to Hawaii. There's not a whole lot you can do. So what I get parents to do...
But how do they have earned income?
They don't have for that. You don't have to have earned income, Sherry.
Okay.
Right? Because now I'm making a gift. How much can I give you every year?
$14,000.
$14,000, and Barb can give you another $14,000. So we can give you $28,000.
Right.
You can give that 10-year-old $14,000.
Okay.
Now your challenge is this thing called the kiddie tax, and that's that if they up to age 25, if they're making more money passively on investments than they're allowed to, they actually get taxed at the parent's rate, the top rate marginally. So you want to be very, very careful about the types of investments that you put in. but you could easily put in $3,000 or $4,000 into that account every year. Mm-hmm. And then when they become age 18, use it to fund an IRA for them, presuming that they have earned income again.
Okay. So, all right, that makes sense to me. Now I have two other follow-up questions about all of that. And I'm a little thrown off because of this whole age thing, because the article's wrong. If they have an IRA account and it's earning interest, and let's just say they leave it there, they can borrow back from that for
never, ever, ever, ever use the word borrow and IRA in the same sentence.
They can take out.
If it's a Roth,
they
can withdraw the contribution,
but not the interest.
Unless it's after 5 years, and it's for something that the IRS says is for a good purpose.
Like college would be one.
College is one of them.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So, all right. And then the other question I have is...
Currently, I should say correct. All tax policy is social policy, or all social policy is tax. It's tax policy. Right.
So, it went into great detail about the kinds of things that could count as income. Now, this is like, for instance, whether or not you have to have a W-2 or not. If you keep track of the money your child earns babysitting or yard mowing.
Technically, that would be true, but don't forget then you're going to also send in self-employment tax of 15% and change, 7.65 times 2, right? On all of that money as well, so that you can then make the contribution into the IRA.
Okay.
Generally, that would be a bad plan, right?
Okay, so when they are doing work for you, let's say you own a business. Mm-hmm. Let's say you want one of your children to come in and work in your office. Mm-hmm. You could pay them. I mean, I think they're referring to younger children than yours, but you could have them earn money that... Can you have them earn money that they don't actually see the money for? You just put it in an IRA?
Well, technically they're going to, again, they're under 18. It can't go to an IRA, Sherry. But I can.
Well, even if they were 18, let's say they are.
So they are 18.
Right.
Yes, and we do have that happen. A lot of my families up in the Lafayette area that are involved in 4-H pay their kids money out of the farm proceeds to do different things, and they happen to make just enough money, the $5,500 that they can make to be able to fund a Roth IRA.
I see. All right. All right. Last question then for me is, this is all pertaining to children. Does any of it work for grandchildren?
The same exact rules apply. If your grandchild is less than 18, then no, they're not going to be able to have an IRA. They can inherit an IRA, and you can set up a type of trust to oversee that, like a custodian, but it's an inherited. They're the beneficiary. They can't open an IRA because they can't sign the paperwork. When they're 18, but it doesn't matter if they're grandchild, great grandchild, or the neighbor next door. The same rules would apply. They have to have income in order to be put money in an IRA. Mm-hmm. They can't have too much income, right, based on the adjusted gross income. And if they're under 50, you can put in $5,500 a year. If they're over 50, you can put in $6,500 a year.
But back to when they turn 18, mm-hmm. It's their money.
It's their money, and there's nothing that you can do about that. Wow. So every year I put in money into my daughter's Roth IRAs. They have earned income. They know that they can use it for their wedding. They can use it for a down payment for a house. They can do what it is they want to do with it. And if she wanted to, she could call TD Ameritrade today and take the money out. And the only thing I can do is not give her any more.
Right. Okay. Right? So would that be your preferred way of gifting money to people?
You can gift the $14,000. Right. And then yes, I would always tell them if you trust them to make good decisions, it's better for them to learn how to handle a little bit of money before you pass, and they get a lot of money that they're responsible for.
Okay.
It's one of the reasons we work with grandkids and children and do what we call family bundling.
Okay.
Good questions, all good stuff. You've been listening to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark, along with Sherry Contos. And if you've got questions like this, folks, email them to me. I will give you an answer. I will change the names and use it on the show, because if it's something that you don't understand, it's a good chance it's going on in somebody else's life as well. And that's what we try to do on the show, is keep everything as real as possible. You're listening to Consider This. I'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC, and also taught financial planning at Purdue University for 7 years. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Cantos.
Very, very happy to have you along. I intentionally left this out of the first part of the show because I'd never know how my emotions are going to go at the time.
Okay.
9/11 is still one of those very, very difficult things for me to talk about. I lost a bunch of people that day. And, I told them as I was in Washington this week, I didn't lose their faces because I hadn't seen their faces. There were a few when I got to eat at Window of the Worlds on the top of one of the trade centers. And, I remember one of the ladies there that took care of me. I didn't have money to buy lobster anymore in the Man on the Moon, and somebody else was paying for the dinner. And she came out and she looked at me and said, "You need two." And we lost all of them, everybody on that side. So it's always a tough thing, but there's just always been something about me and trying to pay as much tribute as I can to the troops and to the the people who have really lost their lives. And so I went, when I was in Washington this time, I went to the Pentagon Memorial. And, it's a very, very touching thing. It's not the same as the towers for me. We've been to New York to the new tower, but it's because I didn't know any of those 184 people. But being able to see that, to see the tribute it was just really, really cool. I've had the benefit of being able to go to Normandy and see the graveyard there and walk around and just do my best to pay respects for what people have done, Sherry, so that we can have the lives that
we do,
that we're able to have and the peace that we have. In Australia, we went to the Highway Memorial, and when you think about how bad it was, their loss rate in World War I was almost 80% of the people that they sent. And it's hard to imagine where they wound up and what happened. But ours was nowhere near that steep. But just the number of people that we have lost, are fascinating and frustrating and overwhelming. And I mean, it's just, you have to go if you get a chance. Now, I will tell you that Arlington didn't do as well for me as the others. It was just, and maybe it was Memorial Day weekend, right? It was very commercialized to me. I was on this little train that took me around. It's so big you can't walk it.
Yeah, right.
But there are just lots and lots and lots of people. But over 30 funerals a day that they average at Arlington, still going on today. And so if you get a chance to go out to D.C. or take your kids, man, I really, really think it's worthwhile. It's worth explaining history to them.
Right.
A lot of times they forget what other people have done so that we can have the lives that we have. And I thank everybody for their service, and again, just appreciate the world that you provide for us.
Yep.
Hey, have a wonderful week, my friends. Shoot me an email. Consider this at yourlifeafterwork.com. God bless and have a great week.
Thanks for listening to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001 or via email at bigjoe@yourlifeafterwork.com. The Financial Enhancement Group, LLC, is based at 429 East 14th Street, Anderson, Indiana, 46016. Be sure to check out their website for more information at yourlifeafterwork.com. Have a great